Leadership isn't about what skin color you have. I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, 29, 68, 53, 8-year degree, 4-year degree. Do you get the job done on a timely manner, extremely urgent, and are you somebody that's anticipating a future crisis from taking place?
Uncensored, where Piers asked a controversial question about the California wildfires. Patrick quickly shut down Piers, calling out the question as ridiculous. The exchange highlighted Patrick's ability to challenge Piers on his own show, putting him in his place. This moment demonstrated Patrick's confidence in defending his views, leaving a strong impression on both Piers and the audience during the interview.
Because you have access to those resources, but unfortunately, he's just not using it.
You tweeted on January 9th, fire every one of these overpaid DEI hires ASAP. One was the LA Department of Water and Power CEO, Christina Crowley, the first LGBTQ fire chief, Christina Kepner, the first lesbian assistant chief, LAFD, Christine Larson, LAFD's first black lesbian equity bureau chief. Now, when you lay it out like that, it looks like DEI gone nuts. I have to say in her defense that Christina Crowley, I think, has actually performed quite well. I'd be more impressed by her than I certainly have by Newsom or by Karen Bass. I mean, now you've had a few days to watch her. Would you agree with that? Or do you still think that these were all hires because of a mindset?
Well, when you get hired and then you say, I can't tell you what percentage it is for me to increase the DEI levels of hires of firefighters to be women because I think it's too low right now, you don't make any sense to me. That you lose credibility when you speak that language. The language of somebody you hire as an executive. And I've hired many where you're paying them a multi six-figure salary to solve a problem. I'm not expecting that person to come and tell me and say, I'm going to hire more white male than ever before. I'm going to hire more people from Jersey than ever before. I'm going to hire more female than ever before. An investor, CEO is going to sit there and say, I'm sorry, I don't care where they're from. Just get somebody that can do the job the right way. Leadership isn't about what skin color you have. I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, 29, 68, 53, 8-year degree, 4-year degree. Do you get the job done on a timely manner, extremely urgent, and are you somebody that's anticipating a future crisis from taking place and you're getting ahead of it with 5, 10, 15 ways of looking at saying, if this happens, we're going to do this. If this happens, we're going to do this. We have this ready for this. We're using these resources for this. We're producing these cameras because out of the last 200 fires that were started, 68% of them were started here. So we're spending $800 million of putting camera in these areas to see the movements of the fire getting started, to be able to prompt and give us an alert. Give me some of those things as a problem solver. If you're doing that, I honestly don't care if you're straight, gay, lesbian. I have no interest in any of that stuff.
The issue with this situation is that, honestly, I don't care about someone's background as long as they're doing their job properly. When it comes to critical roles like firefighting, I only care about one thing: the person who can do the job and save lives. If you're the best person to save lives, protect animals, and prevent homes from burning down, then hire the best person for the job, regardless of what they are. The focus should always be on capability and effectiveness, especially in life-or-death situations like wildfires. However, the problem arises when people use diversity as a tool for self-promotion or as a get-out-of-jail-free card. They prioritize diversity for the sake of bragging rights or to look good, often at the expense of competency. For instance, instead of focusing on whether someone is the best candidate, they might highlight the fact that they hired the first lesbian fire chief, as Piers Morgan mentioned. The underlying issue isn't the individual's identity, but the idea that diversity is being prioritized over actual qualifications and results. This can create a dangerous situation where the primary goal, saving lives and preventing destruction, is overshadowed by political or ideological motives. To people like Patrick Bet-David and myself, it doesn't matter who is doing the job as long as they are the best at it. Unfortunately, for people like Gavin Newsom or those within the woke culture, the focus shifts away from the quality of work to the identity of those hired. They seem to care more about having a diverse group in leadership roles, even if it means compromising on competency. This mindset risks the safety of Californians. They might even prioritize having fewer straight white men in these roles over ensuring that the fire protection system is functioning optimally to protect lives and property. In fact, I believe some of these individuals would rather let California burn and to not meet their diversity quotas. I believe Patrick Bet-David is completely correct in pointing this out. It's not about doing what's best for the people of California, but about pushing a political agenda.
But if we're hiring you and you're talking about you want to increase diversity, that's not your job. Your job is to protect the families in the state of California, in LA, minimize these fires. And quite frankly, they failed royally, Piers.
What's going to happen, Patrick? I mean, you're the best person to ask about this, the insurance element of this. We know that insurance companies began removing cover for a lot of people before these fires because they said that their companies would simply not be viable if they didn't. We obviously know that after all this, two things are going to happen. One is that premiums are going to go through the roof for everyone who's got an existing fire policy. But secondly, I would imagine that the insurance companies in relation to fire cover in LA, they're all going to run a mile, aren't they? I mean, if they were already doing that before this, who's going to want to insure anyone against fire in Los Angeles? And even if they do, who can afford it?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. When we started, you said something at the beginning. You said California's preventing insurance companies from banning, canceling their insurance protection in the state of California. Fortune's article says California bans insurance cancellation in LA fire-affected areas. You don't get to determine that. That's not how business works. There's the right to represent customers that you want. You ever gone to a restaurant and it says, we have the right to refuse. We have the right to refuse. You have the right to refuse. Yeah, you could be offended by it, but you have the right to refuse. Let me give you an interesting story. I bought a boat here in Florida 4 years ago. My insurance company, Chubb, said you need to have a captain on it because you're not a captain. You've never had a boat before this size. I said, no problem. One day my captain's not available. I decide to take the boat out myself. Would you like me to take a boat out where you're insuring, and if I crash it, would you like to protect that boat knowing a person who is not a qualified captain is willing to go out there? Would you like to put that risk on the captain itself, myself, without any insurance? Piers, what would you and I do with somebody like that?
Right, obviously.
You wouldn't insure them.
Yeah.
So guess what happened 2 days later? I got a letter from Chubb with my picture on it saying, we noticed you posted this, and there was no captain there.
Wow.
Because of that, we're dropping your insurance policy.
Wow.
And it was an Instagram video that they showed proof, and they were right. I lost my policy with Chubb. You know what happened when they did that? I wasn't offended by it. They're right. I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I've been in the insurance industry now for almost 25 years, and I'll never forget when my agents would come up to me with one of their relatives, and they would say, well, yes, this person's 280 pounds and 5'3", but everybody needs life insurance. Why wasn't AIG or whatever the company approving this person? I said, look, let's forget the company. Set aside the company's name. Let's flip it. Let's say you have $100 million that you're insuring people. Let's replace this person's name from being your aunt, and let's just name this client John Adams. If the profile of the person's health comes to you, height and weight, would you put $100 million of your money that you put as an insurance company, would you risk $1 million of it with this person saying they're healthy? Absolutely not. Why would you expect an insurance company to do that? That totally makes sense. We got everybody to be thinking about like underwriters. They're thinking like business people. Let's go to insurance today. Do you know 7% of loans in California are not being closed because when the homeowner, the person that's buying the house, when it comes to the end, and they're like, yeah, great, I like the loan amount, I can afford to pay for it. And then the premium for insurance comes, they're like, oh, I can't afford this.
Yeah.
Honey, we can't afford to pay this much. They're canceling it.
Yes.
I really don't understand why anyone still lives in California. After listening to Patrick Bet-David break it all down, it just reinforces everything I already knew about how terrible it is to live there. In the video I posted earlier today, not sure if it's before or after this one, I go off about the nightmare that is California. Between the high crime rates, the outrageous cost of living for housing, groceries, and gas, and the awful leadership, it just doesn't make sense. And Patrick Bet-David's breakdown makes it even worse. Not only is California plagued with all these issues, but there's also the culture to contend with. If you're not extremely woke or part of the liberal, blue-haired, septum-pierced crowd, it can feel like a miserable place to live. But what Patrick brings up that really adds another layer to the situation is the cost of insurance. When you look at what's been happening with wildfires in California, it's easy to see why insurance costs are going to skyrocket. Imagine being an insurance company and seeing all these insured homes get burned down. The insurance companies are going to have to raise premiums just to cover those costs, and that's only going to make it even more expensive to live in the state. It's already one of the most expensive places to live, and now the added cost of insurance on top of all the other expenses is just ridiculous. It makes the idea of living in California even less appealing. Honestly, I don't know why anyone would want to live there. Sure, some people will argue that they live there because their job is there, but that's just not a good enough excuse. Even if you're in a good position with a decent job, the cost of living is so high that you're probably just throwing away your money. There are plenty of places to live that offer a better quality of life without the insane cost of living and all the cultural and political nonsense that's been going on. Even if you have to take a job that pays a little less, moving to a more affordable area could be a better option. You'll have more disposable income, fewer headaches, and won't have to deal with the crazy culture and politics that are so prevalent in California. The point Patrick makes about insurance is something I didn't even consider, but it's a major issue. If you're living in areas near the wildfires, you can expect to see even higher insurance premiums, and that's just another financial burden to add on top of everything else. California was already expensive, but now it's only going to get worse. If California was at least a nice place to live, maybe I could understand why people would stay. But right now, it seems like a horrible place to live, especially when you consider all the financial pressures and cultural tension. It's just not worth it. Honestly, if you're living in California and you're watching this, I'd love to know why. I'm sure someone out there watching this video lives there, so please tell me why you choose to stay. I don't want to hear the excuses like my job's here, because you can always find work somewhere else, even if it means taking a pay cut. The reality is you could live somewhere cheaper, have a better quality of life, and not be constantly surrounded by the kind of people and ideologies that make living in California unbearable. By the way, let me know in the comments what you think about PatrickBetdavid absolutely schooling Piers Morgan on his own show. Piers asked us some silly questions, and Patrick shut him down in a way that was both impressive and necessary. Let me know what you think about this whole PBD versus Piers Morgan situation. I'm curious to hear everyone's take.